And we are live.
We're live. Hello.
Hello. And we should say this is take two because obviously we got the giggles the first time round. So, but we've done well with these so far, haven't we? We haven't had any bloopers so far.
Until now.
Until now. It's always going to be the first. And now it's fine.
Ever professional.
Anyway, welcome to Strong Tea Quick Brews. This is a mini bite-sized podcast version of our master Big Brother podcast, which is called Strong Tea. I'm Katie from Strong and Brave.
And I'm Vicky from Leighton Life Coaching.
And together we do make up Strong Tea, which is a podcast designed to talk about the difficult to talk about subjects, things that are taboo, things that maybe people feel a bit uneasy talking about, but important conversations to have, things that we hope will educate ourselves, but also educate you guys as well. So if you haven't listened before, the important question that we always ask at the start of every episode is, what tea are you drinking this week?
I am drinking green tea in my rainbow cup every
I love that.
And it's just reaffirmed that I don't like green tea.
Don't anyone does.
My other half does, but I'm not a fan. I'm sorry. I've given it another go, but it does.
Grass.
Yes, it does taste like grass. Yeah. How about you? Are you having better luck?
I am having better luck. I've gone for a pucker tea, herbal, and it's peppermint and licorice.
Oh, lovely. Very nice.
Helps with the digestion, which aids the fish finger sandwich that I just had for lunch.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I know it's good. And we could talk about fish finger sandwiches and food all day because we've talked about food on quite a lot of occasions. However, today the topic is not fish finger sandwiches. It is Time to Talk Day, which is happening on Thursday, the 3rd of February. It's all about mental health and encouraging the conversation of mental health. So what Vicky and I thought we would do is create a bit of a resource for people on both of our separate websites. That's leightonlifecoaching.com and strongandbrave.co.uk. We thought we'd put together an A to Z of mental health, because I think there's a lot of things that sort of get forgotten about when, you sort of talk about mental health and you think about the obvious things like anxiety and depression and medication and those things. But there are a lot of things that I think are interweaved with mental health that get forgotten about. So that's what we're designing this chat for, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think people just think the obvious ones with kind of mental health, but there are some others that people just generally forget about, or even that they have them themselves but they don't recognize it as being a mental health issue or in need of help. So yeah, kind of that demystifying it as well. And the whole very point of Time to Talk is to make it a conversation where we're more honest and open about it.
Absolutely. And I think we've said it before, and we will say it again, absolutely opening the conversation with anyone around you, whether it's a work colleague, friend, family member, asking if they're okay. It's a very British thing to do, isn't it? To say, hey, how are you? And the other person says, yeah, I'm fine. How are you? Yeah, I'm fine. And that's it, but yes, I'm fine doesn't always mean yes, I'm fine. And if you ask again, are you really okay? That's when a lot of the time I think people will start to, because it sort of opens them up to say, well, this isn't just a token question. This actually means the person wants to know. And that opens up the conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And me and my stats, 1 in 4 of us are gonna suffer from a mental health problem in any given year. So that's quite a high statistic. So with those stats, one of you in a group of friends is more than likely gonna have a mental health issue or something that they're really struggling with. And I know we've said it before, and it is becoming a bit, actually it was in take 1, it's becoming a bit more of a conversation. It's becoming a bit more known that, and accepted, but it's still it's still not taboo, but I still think there is a bit of a stigma attached to mental health that just needs to be demolished.
Absolutely. And I think even though it's getting easier for men as well, I actually think we've got a long way to go, because there are certain things which we will talk about, which people might just think are a part of everyday life, which actually can impact you and your mental health quite specifically. And you said 1 in 4 people that's an incredibly high number, you know, and people sort of don't take as much attention. I don't think people don't pay as much attention or take as much care of themselves when it's a mental health issue. They, you know, if their arm was hanging off, they'd obviously go to a hospital and get that sorted. But people are like, you know, I've been suffering, you know, I'm incredibly down. I'm like, you know, I can't get out of bed. I haven't got any energy. I'm feeling incredibly low all the time. Oh, but it's just a phase. And it almost gets put to one side as, oh, it's nothing. Yeah. Whereas no, you know, it's about recognizing when that's not normal and actually reaching out and getting help, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people think mental health in its stereotype form is, you know, someone crying all the time and, you know, not everyone will display mental health or what they're struggling with on their sleeve or on, you know, on their face or in their actions. They will try and hide it maybe because they don't want to burden someone else. And it just having that loaded on top of you is a lot. And it is a lot, and it can have absolutely detrimental effects.
I think it leads us on to our A to Z mental health, which is anxiety, which is something that I've suffered with for years. And one of the things that people always say to me is, oh, I'd never have known. And I guess, you know, when you have people who are high functioning alcoholics who are able to go to work, they're able to function on a normal basis, and no one would know. That's how I was with anxiety. That's and it still is. I know how to manage it now, and I know what my triggers are, and I know all of those things about me because it's taken me many, many years to know. But people wouldn't have known. And therefore, because I was always bubbly and noisy, some might say, I don't know, no. People wouldn't always say, are you okay? And actually sometimes that's what I needed, you know. But I did used to really enjoy partying and drinking a lot. Was I using that as a bit of a cover? Possibly. So, you know, I think there's a lot of people who probably struggle with anxiety who think, oh, I'm just a bit of a worrier. I know I had grandparents who were a bit like that, and people would say, oh, they're just a worrier, when actually you look back and you think, well, was that anxiety? You know, because I've actually heard people say, oh, well, we never had that in our day, whereas that's not true. You did have it in your day, it just wasn't as widely talked about. And I think that's now it's becoming part of the conversation, and people are recognizing the signs. I think it's also important to recognize the signs in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, anxiety is a bit of a stereotype people have in their heads what anxiety looks like and what an anxiety attack can look like. A lot of people think it's, you know, absolutely shaking, having that meltdown, whereas an anxiety attack can be quite silent. It can be an internal, you know. So anxiety because anxiety is very much an emotion and all those physical things that go on inside in your body. But the conditions like general anxiety disorder, there's a whole load of things that goes on with that as well. So anxiety is a bit of an umbrella for a lot of things that could be happening. And I think it's definitely something that people should learn more about, because there is a difference between just feeling a bit nervous to anxiety to, you know, general anxiety disorder. There's a whole spectrum there.
Yeah, and that was one of the things when I was diagnosed. They just said to me, you know, you have anxiety, and I was like, right, okay, what does that mean? And this was probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago. And they didn't give me any further information, and I went off and I researched and I read books on it, and I got a therapist, and I started to understand more and more about myself. And, you know, it was narrowed down to, it was generalized anxiety disorder. And I was like, right, okay, well, I'd never even heard of that until a therapist had actually helped me work out what it was. And I just think there is so much to learn about mental health that really, even now, even though it's more of a conversation, we are just scratching the tip of the iceberg, it feels like.
Absolutely. And I wasn't going to talk about it, but hell, I will now. So yeah, I've also been told I've got general anxiety disorder, but I've been trying to get a diagnosis for adult ADHD. because there is sometimes things get misconstrued or misdiagnosed. So GAD, which is a general anxiety disorder, is often the same symptoms as adult ADHD.
Okay.
And what they think is there's a whole load of women out there who believe they have GAD or have been diagnosed with GAD when actually they have ADHD.
Okay.
It's just a very difficult thing to diagnose, and there are a whole host of other symptoms and things that happen along with ADHD other than the things that happen in anxiety when you're having anxiety. So yeah, I very much feel that kind of physicality when it comes with anxiety. It just feels like it's dialed up to 11 sometimes, and it is a difficult one to control, and it comes across as being confident and bubbly.
Yep.
And on the surface cool as a cucumber, but underneath it's that duck kind of going at a million miles an hour across the pond.
Yes. Oh, it's the second time we've talked about ducks today as well, isn't it?
Oh yes. Yeah. God, I love a duck.
I'm going to move on from that, otherwise we'll be talking about ducks and ADHD all day. We're not going to go A, B, C, D, E and go all the way through, because we'll pop those on our website. But the next one we're going to go to is C, which we've got down as chatting, which is the core thing behind time to talk day, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually behind strong tea and quick brews. Time to talk in, and the very essence of just chatting and talking it out is just so powerful. Counseling, therapy, coaching, the ability to just talk it out in a safe space is something that cannot be underestimated. I've been to counseling and coaching, and both have given me light bulb moments. They've given me help, they've given me clarity. And when you think a problem is unsolvable, even just talking it out can help, even if the problem hasn't been solved.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I find that even after I've had therapy sessions and I might have cried all the way through and it's felt horrendous, but I come out and I always feel a little bit lighter, because you kind of feel like, even though you're not solving the issue, because it might be something that's so big that can't be solved, you're lightening the load by sharing it. And that person, like you say, it's that safe space of having that person. And I always say a therapist is great because they're impartial and they're just designed to listen. But if you can find the right person in your life for that as well, and as someone that's not going to judge, someone that's not going to try and fix things, someone that's just literally going to listen. I think that is one of your biggest strengths, Vicky. You are such a good listener. Every time I listen to you listening to me, I'm like, I wish I could be good like that. And I've got motor mouth, so I can't help it. But it's having that person who can just sit and absorb and listen, I think is so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it really is. And I think I'm a funny onion, because I'm kind of one of those, I'll listen and I'll be thinking, I want to solve the problem. But then the other half is, well, no, you get people of two camps, those who want to solve the problem and the other that just want to vent. Does that make sense? So
yes.
Friends will come to you with a problem. They either want you to help them solve it or they just want to vent. And it's kind of that judgment call of, okay, what did they want me for? Because in a professional capacity, it's pretty, it's fine. But when a friend comes to me, it's kind of making that judgment call of, because there's an itching part that I just want to solve the problem.
Yes.
But actually, as you're saying, chatting and just having that space as a friend or as a, relative, it's invaluable. It just, yeah.
And I don't even think the conversation has to be incredibly deep. We already mentioned asking twice about if you're really okay. And if someone says, no, do you know what? No, actually, I'm not. I'm just having a really hard time at home at the moment. And you just sit down and have a cup of tea, and you might talk about what's going on at home, or you might talk about something totally different, but it's given that person a chance to escape a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people shy away from asking someone if they're okay, because it's like, oh God, they're going to unload everything onto me, and I don't think I'm ready for that. And I don't think conversations have to be like that. I think it's just a case of being ready to listen, to whatever that person, you don't have to have a solution. It's just, it will mean more to that person who's struggling than you can actually imagine, I think.
I think one thing I've learned from doing these strong teas and the conversations that we've had, particularly the upcoming one that we'll be releasing, is very much I've stopped saying, if you need anything, you know where I am. Mm-hmm. I'm now being really directive and saying, is there anything that I can help you with? Is there anything that I can do? Because it just feels a bit, I don't know, not dismissive, but, oh, if there's anything that I can do. And as you said before, just that asking what's, oh, I'm fine. It's that kind of easy breezy, oh, well, if you need anything. Whereas being that directive, I'm finding it's a bit more, I don't know, it's just an easier thing to ask, because then you know if that person needs you and can approach you.
But people are probably more likely then to actually think, because if you say, I'm here if you need me, the direct response is to say, oh, thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah. You know, but you might then think, oh, well, I do need help, but I don't know how to approach them, or I don't want to put this on them. Whereas if you say to someone, what do you need from me? I think it puts someone on the spot, and they might say, do you know what, I'm okay at the moment, but I might need this further down the line. I found that very much when I was grieving, you know, in the early days when it was so intense, and people were like, you know, just let me know if you need me or get in touch. And I was just like, I didn't have the energy to reach out. But then I had people say to me, when you're ready, let me know and I will bring this for you. Or let me know and I'll be there. I'll come over. Or what do you need from me? And it was those direct things that kind of put you in a space where you're thinking, it's not just an open offer. It's actually saying, I will bring you a lasagna at this point. When you feel like you can eat a meal, I will bring this to you.
Yeah.
And I think it means more, and it's more, it gives the other person not, it doesn't really give them an out, does it?
No, absolutely. And it does make them think about what they need, because it's so easy when you have a mental health problem to be consumed by it. It's difficult to put you first. And so it's important to actually think, well, what do I need right now? What actually do I need to make myself better? Or what can it, because it can feel really isolating. And just putting yourself first by thinking, right, what do I need, by being prompted is, you know, hugely powerful.
And people don't always know what they need, do they?
No.
That's the other thing. I've found that in the past, and I'm like, some days I'll be able to say, this is what I don't need. And I'm quite good at that. I don't need green tea, enjoying that. You know, I don't need that. That's not helpful. That's what I want to avoid now. But actually, when someone says, what do you need? You're thinking, oh God, what is going to make me feel better? You don't always know. But I would say if you are struggling with, you know, any form of mental health issue, you know, doesn't have to be severe, you know, whatever it is, if you're even suffering from loneliness, if there's something that makes you feel better, make a note of it, you know, whether it's a mental note or a physical note, or having a cup of tea in the garden with a friend, you know, do you know what, that really brightened my whole day just doing that. Right, okay, I'll remember that for next time. And it's those little things that you actually make a mental note of as you go through, that you think, that really made a difference to me, I want to do that again, I want to do something similar. And I think if you start to build up a bit of an arsenal of things that will help you, I think the better chance you have of working your way through it, because it does feel some days like it's a uphill struggle, doesn't it?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a massive journaling fan. It's one of my go-to things to tell people, you know, journaling it's really powerful. And I know people, what's writing stuff down gonna, it changes everything. It really, really does. And there's obviously different variants of journaling and so on. So we just made a J in our alphabet there.
Oh, there we did. Haven't even got that one down. Need to put that in for the next one. No. Well, do you know what? I was going to say something else then, and then I thought, you know, we would just be on chatting all day, which is wrong. So moving on to F, which is about finding help. Now, I don't know if it's because I've become so immersed in my own mental health over the last couple of years that I am so aware of where to find help. But I don't think that's the case for everyone, is it?
No, I think the very notion of trying to get help in the first place can be daunting.
Absolutely.
I think of finding help means you're admitting it, or finding help is acknowledging that, oh, something isn't quite right. And just for the record, there is no normal. There is, saying something wrong. It's not wrong. It's, it's some, like you said before, if, your leg was hanging off or your arm was hanging off, or it was a physical thing, you get it mended. Your brain and the chemicals are no different.
Yeah.
So it's just a more complicated organ that's in your head that, can do its own thing at times. I think that very notion of, recognizing that there's something's gone askew, or, it's gone a bit funky. It's time to kind of seek the help that you need.
Yeah.
And again, the stigma attached to finding help or getting help is something that needs to be completely quashed. Because it's no different from seeking physical help.
It's not. I really don't understand where the stigma came from originally. Like, I don't understand why someone thought that, you were weak if you, you had certain issues, or, I don't understand how, because someone's responsible for that. The point is, but at some point, someone would have said, oh, your leg's hanging off, you need to go to a hospital. But at some point somewhere, someone has said, like the whole stigma of boys shouldn't cry. Someone started that because it was like boys should be strong and boys should be tough. And actually, no, because that breeds a man that is unable to show and share his emotion and be in touch with that. And I think, the fear that comes from it, and I'm not just saying it's for men, because I know female friends of mine have struggled with certain issues and are too fearful to admit it to themselves, admit it to other people, go and seek help, because the stigma attached to it and the worry about judgment and treatment, all of those sorts of things that come with it is quite terrifying. I think the good thing about the world that we're living in now is the fact that, there's so much knowledge available. And I think knowledge is power. It's about, if you think, you're concerned you have a certain mental health issue, or, you're worried about anxiety or anything like that, there's a lot of research reading online from reputable places, I will say, places like Mind, Samaritans, Rethink Mental Illness as well. Really good resources to check out online, to read through, so that you're able to sort of get an idea and think, right, is this me? And I think also with doing that, you realize that you're not the only one, which I think everyone feels like they're the only one, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I second what you're saying completely. I think the science has caught up, because I think, even way back into the kind of First World War territory with things like shell shock and PTSD, which, there was some scientists in the background, and psychologists trying to work out why these men were behaving the way they were, but it was very much a hush taboo, and even years later, PTSD was something that, particularly for men, it was kind of, well, man up, but now that the science has caught up of the actual ramifications of PTSD and, the mental fallout of, horrific instances and being exposed to things, even abuse and things like that, and why people react and their brains react the way they do to things, the science has caught up, and therefore that learning and knowledge is out there of how better to support it. But I think without those pioneers and that, the psychologists and everything actually showing what is happening to the brain and therefore the behavior, I think, that stigma is, but like you said, generations wise, it's taken far too long for the stigma to be completely broken.
And it makes you think, where are we going to be in 10, 20, 30 years time? I think finding help is actually so much braver than hiding away, because you are facing up to it, and it means that you can whatever extent of mental health issues that you have, you can reclaim control. And I'm the biggest advocate for that in the world, because I thought I was going to be anxiety ridden for the rest of my life. You know, at one point it was so bad that it didn't render me incapable of living my life, but it was causing me a significant deal of issues. And I thought I was going to be like that forever. And now, like I said, I've learned so much about myself through getting help that has meant that I'm able to take those issues and I can control them to a certain extent. I'm not saying I don't have issues with anxiety anymore, because I do, but it's more a case of being able to step back and understand what's happening to you, understand why it's happening, understand what those triggers are, how to deal with them, how you can look at things from a bigger picture rather than being in that red mist and that panic, you know. And finding help is scary, but it's so worth it. So worth it.
Yeah. And I think the obviously different facets of how you can find help, so things like, you know, your GP, you know, professional groups, therapists, counselors. But I've also found solace in support groups and just online chats and so on, particularly with the ADHD, and kind of, you know, after 40 years, kind of thinking, my gosh, if I had this all this time, and, you know, just talking to other people about the behaviors, and it's that reassurance that actually it's not just me. Because, you know, talking to other people with anxiety, and I think, well, yeah, that kind of happens to me, but kind of at a scale of, you know, over there. So I kind of even felt like an outsider talking to people about anxiety, because it just felt a bit odd. So support groups really help, because you can liken how you're going through, or at least have someone who can understand.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
Do you find as well, diagnosis, and I've spoken to people in the past that have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and a variety of different mental health issues. Diagnosis almost seems like that light bulb moment of, oh God, that makes so much sense. And it's that having a diagnosis, I actually think, helps you regain your life back, because you almost know what you're fighting, you know what you're dealing with, and you're able to tackle it.
It's funny, because I'm between those two worlds at the moment, because I'm obviously going through a process where, you know, I want to see if I've got ADHD. I think everyone's pretty much going, yeah, but it's a really convoluted process to go through, and, you know, it's full of behavior analysis, and it's quite a long process. So I'm between the two places where if I get diagnosed, it'll be, oh, of course, yes, I have a label now, this makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But equally, I've had 40 years of this where I've lived with it, I've kind of dealt with it, you know. So what's the point in having a label on something that I've been able to kind of, so it's really, yeah, rock and a hard place. I think personally I'd like to know, just because I don't need the label, but it would just help me understand a bit more. But yeah, it's this tricky thing, isn't it, the whole diagnosis route.
I think from the people I've spoken to have always said, actually having a label, even though a lot of people don't like to be defined by labels, and I don't, you know, my anxiety doesn't define who I am, but it's, you know, being told I've got generalized anxiety disorder and being able to go to a bookshop, buy a book on it, read it, and go, oh yes, that's me. Yeah, okay, right, now how do we deal with it? Right, let's try this. And actually it's almost like facing up to your fears and your demons, if you like, because you're saying, I know I've got this, I'm just going to deal with it. I just need to find what works for me and just deal with it. And I think it's a terrifying thought for a lot of people. I'm not belittling that in the slightest, but I have been there, and I thought I was never going to be normal again. And actually I do live a normal existence with limited issues with anxiety. So yeah, find help, people. It's the way forward.
It's the most powerful thing you can do, and the bravest.
Certainly is. Going to go on to Jay now, and this is something that a lot of people don't necessarily associate with mental health. I'm going to let you take this one, Vicky.
Job stress. Ooh. So now that we are released back into the world and everyone's going back to work, or not,
back into the wild,
back into the wild, feels like that. But it's now that balance of, we've just come out of lockdowns, working from home, maybe we've been doing a bit 50-50 or whatever, and now things are going to be very different. And so there's the life that we've been used to for the last 2 years, which has been just bonkers, to now, which is, you know, a new norm, and the stresses that are going to come with that. And then you've got job stress of a different definition, which is just literally the job is stressful. I think we all work way too hard. We need to take note from the Swedish, who do kind of 4 working days, and, you know, just those, we really need to learn more about the Nordics. But those kind, and, you know, people who are stressed, they often leash out, unleash, what's the word? Lash. Thank you. I can't talk today. Has that just become a dictionary? Obvious. Yeah. Not
now though. Fine. You pointed it out now, so everyone is aware.
Yeah. And green tea doesn't have any caffeine, so that messed up in space, didn't it? Yay. Yeah. So obviously, with high stress, with workload, that's going to mean that people are going to offload onto the colleagues, onto staff. Job stress is probably, and I haven't looked at the stat for this, but one of the highest reasons for kind of stress, anxiety. I know in my experience, I've met a lot of people where, you know, they're not exactly happy where they are, and it is mainly down to job stress.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that people just assume is a thing, you know, I'm just stressed with work. And there is, you know, like with anxiety, where you talk about, you know, some people are just a bit of a worrier, and it's, you know, that is just how they are. Doesn't necessarily mean they have anxiety. Stress at work sometimes can be good. It can be, you know, motivating. It can be, you know, it can be an encouragement tool. It can, you know, if you're working to deadlines, if you're working, you know, within budgets and parameters and things, it kind of, a lot of people thrive on that sort of situation. But it's when it gets to the point that it stops you sleeping, you're starting to fear going into work, you know, you have a built up anxiety level because of it, you know, all these sort of things can lead into further issues with mental health. You know, they can lead into anxiety, they can lead into depression, and a lot of people don't see the association. They just think, I'm just a bit stressed with work. And I think it's one of the things that employers are getting better with, in terms of maybe offering mental health training, maybe offering a mental health first aider in the workplace, you know, things like that. But they're not always as good at recognizing when they're causing the stress. And that's what the problem is. You know, it's sending the emails 24 hours a day, you know, staff members, it's putting pressure on them. It's, you know, it's got to be an all-round thing. I think it's got to come from the top. It has to be filtered all the way through, and it's to recognize when you're in a toxic workplace as well. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I liked what you said before about some people thrive under kind of tight deadlines and controlled, stressful environments. But I think, you know, one of the things that I remember being told is that burnout is exhaustion without the joy. So you can be kind of exhausted because you love the pressure, and because it brings you that adrenaline buzz and that I'm getting stuff done. Yeah, this is brilliant. But then burnout happens because it's no longer fun, and those balls you've been juggling, they suddenly turn into a kind of bowling balls, and they're just too heavy, and it's just and it can happen all of a sudden. One of our strong teas coming up is all about that, and just the catastrophic results of being in a job stress situation for too long and not seeing it coming. So yeah, absolutely, it's a biggie.
Yeah, certainly is, and it's a really important one to listen to. So we're going to be putting that out on the 3rd. So if you want to listen to that, that one is going to be entitled Surviving Mental Breakdown. So I'm going to jump on to M now, which I think is quite an important one. It's medication. Now, we talk about strong teas being a taboo, all about discussing taboo subjects. And I think this is probably one of those things that we could do a whole episode on. And, being on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication is still seen as a bit of a taboo. It's seen as, oh God, well, I've got to take medication to get over this. I'm obviously weak. Or I think the stigma needs to be removed when it comes to that, because again, if you had a headache, take paracetamol. It's not, if you had an infection, you would take antibiotics. So why shouldn't you help yourself by taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety? I think the important thing with medication, and don't get me wrong, there are some mental health issues that require medication on a long-term basis, which absolutely is a necessity. But there are certain things that, maybe if you address the root cause, taking meds to help you improve your mental health can be a really positive thing. But it's always about addressing the root cause of why you're feeling like that. I think that's important, rather than just putting a plaster over it. It's about looking further down the line, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in addition to that, it's understanding what the medication is going to do. So we talked before about kind of chemicals being imbalanced in your brain, and if it's a little bit this way, then it's making you depressed. If it's perhaps a little bit that way, then it's GAD. And I think a lot of people kind of think about the stigma of medication before really understanding what the medication does. And it's just kind of offsetting that chemical imbalance, or it can be little tweaks here and there, and it can be just a teeny tiny amount. It's understanding what the medication can do for you. And I think there's a lot of fear about addiction and things like that. Am I going to have to am I going to be reliant on this? And it's making sure that you understand what the medication is and having that information at your palm to then make a decision, because equally it's okay if you still don't want to.
Absolutely. Go on.
No, I was going to say, because medication isn't the be all and end all as well, because I think particularly with GAD, and I don't know if you had the same experience as I did, but alongside medication, you do therapies, cognitive behavioral therapies and kind of a counselling, or, that it's not just a right, here are the pills, go off now. There's very much a sustainable behaviour element that you need to address, as well as just getting chemically, because remember, mental health is not your fault.
Yes.
Mental health is something that's happening beyond your control in your body. And a lot of people forget that as well. You wouldn't choose to have a mental health problem. It's not like you've gone into a shop and gone, I'll have one of those please, and got it wrong. It's, you've not put yourself in a situation where you have accidentally caught mental health. It's something that you have that is beyond your control.
Absolutely. It takes me back to, because when I was originally diagnosed with anxiety, and it wasn't anything specific about that, the GP was like, I'm going to put you on these meds. And at the time I was just like, weirdly, because again, like I said, this was about 10, 12 years ago, I was like, I almost felt like I'd failed a little bit, which I look back now and I think absolutely that is not the case. But at the time, because of the stigma attached, and out of choice, I only decided to stay on them about 6 months. But it was further down the line, because the GP just said, this is what you've got, here's some pills, off you go. They didn't offer me any support. They didn't offer me any form of therapy, anything like that. I went off and I found my own therapist, and that's when I started to learn a bit more. But it was my choice to come off the pills, and I came off them when I was ready, and I felt in a much better place mentally. But I met a friend of mine recently who has been put on antidepressants, and she said, Katie, I feel the best that I've felt probably in my entire life. And I was just like, Amazing. Because so many people that I speak to say, oh, I've been offered antidepressants, but I don't want to take them because, you know, it just, you know, flattens your mood out and you can't get excited or you can't get low. And I'm like, that's not what they do. And I think there's so much misconception out there, especially now we have access to the internet and lots of people are spouting all sorts of stuff. You know, people, like you say, they don't actually find out what that drug does. And in a lot of cases, well, in all cases, they're designed to help, aren't they? They are designed to help you. And if you are getting them, you feel like you've had a good assessment from a GP and that you're talking to someone as well, I think it's important to do them both hand in hand, medication and therapy. You know, I think you can get right back on top of controlling, you know, your mental health. Absolutely.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
I'm going to let you take the last one because you chose it.
Weird. It's on my CV. Yeah, mental health can make you feel like you are the weirdest person in the world. It really can. It can feel lonely. It can feel isolating. And for me in particular, it has the knock-on effects of if I'm at a social event or if I'm talking to someone, I think, why did I say that? They're probably thinking I'm so weird. And, you know, that's a lot of negative automatic thoughts there as well. But having these things that you are so aware of because it's your mental health problem, it can make you feel weird.
Yeah.
But you're not weird. It's not weird to have a mental health problem, particularly as 1 in 4 of us have it. So it's very much not weird.
Yeah, it's like you said, it can be very lonely and very isolating. And I think when you start talking about it, and you can even start, if you join these support chat rooms online, you can sometimes do that anonymously, and you can also get apps for anxiety chat rooms as well and depression chat rooms. You don't even have to expose yourself as to who you are. You can just sort of sit and you can watch what other people have to say, and you will soon realize, honestly, I remember the first time I opened a book that talked about anxiety, and it was basically like a tick list of everything I'd been doing over the last several years that I had no explanation for. I was like, why am I being like this? Why is that happening when that happens? And I didn't know, because no one else had ever said to me, oh, I've got anxiety. When I opened this book, it was like a revelation. It was like, oh, you know, and I was like, oh my God, all this time, there's me thinking I'm weird and that it's just me, and it's not. And like I say, with the resources that are out there now, if you're thinking, maybe this is me, a bit concerned about that, you know, I'm not advocating Google as just a free-for-all, but looking on, you know, decent websites, and we'll put some on the blog post as well that we do, like Mind and Rethink Mental Illness. There's so many resources now that can help you, and they don't just have things to read, they have helplines. And if you want to ring up and give a false name and just chat to someone, then you can. And that's what the Samaritans are there for as well. There are so many people and outlets out there now for help that it's just so important to just jump in and just give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a point then and I completely forgot what I was going to say. This is it. Okay. So, and I think going back with the weird thing and being and trying to find out a bit more, I think a lot of people don't realize some of the things that are mental health problems. So things like OCD and those kind of things that people think are weird. And it's like, but it's not weird. It shows how powerful the brain is, and you know how incredible our psychology works, and it just again needs to find some rebalancing or retuning if that's what you choose to do, or however you want to deal with it. But yeah, I think people don't often realize what is, you know, behavior associated with a mental health problem and just label it as weird. And that frustrates me as well.
Yeah, one of the things when you were saying that, I was thinking about sleep, because I speak to so many people who are like, I'm just not sleeping at the moment. I'm like, well, why not? I don't know, I'm just not sleeping. And it seems like they just accept it. Again, like the job stress, it's just one of those things. And actually, when you start rooting down to it, when I started therapy all those years ago, one of the things that they said to me was, do you find you're struggling to sleep? And I said, yes, it's one of the biggest problems that I've got, because I'd have terrible night terrors, and, you know, I wouldn't be able to get off to sleep to start off with. And something that they told me to do, which I still do to this day, just keep a notepad by the side of the bed. And every night before I go up, I write down a list of all the things that I want to do tomorrow, everything that's in my head that is maybe niggling me a little bit, bothering me, anything that is cause for concern or anything like that. And I write it all down. As soon as it's out of your head, you're like, oh, okay, I can relax now. And 9 times out of 10, I have the best night's sleep, because I'm not panicking, because I've written it down. I can deal with it in the morning. I'm not going to forget it. It's there in black and white. And people just assume that things like sleep issues are just a thing. And again, like you say, it's not being aware of what those things are and just thinking maybe, oh, just a little bit weird, you know, whatever it is, you're not weird.
Absolutely. And if you are weird, stay weird, be weird. I love being weird.
Weird is the way forward, I think.
It is good.
Right. Well, I think we're going to stop waffling now. I think we've done a lot of that. We are going to put a full list of the A to Z of mental health on our blogs. There's no X. So if anyone can think up an X, then please feel free to let us know. But apart from that, we have been a bit creative with some of them, but but it is an A to Z minus the X. We will also pop on the blog post any help resources that we can think of, like Mind and things like that, just if you do want to have a little look. But if anyone wants to get in touch and talk about anything like this, have any questions, or get in touch and talk about your experience on one of these podcasts, then we'd really, really love to hear from you, and we'll put our contact details on the bottom of the podcast. So thank you so much for listening / watching. We hope you enjoyed it. And we will be back with more very, very soon.
Yeah, in coordinated vests.
Oh, yeah. Definitely the way forward. Uniform, unofficial uniform.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, let's adopt it. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.